Hi, I'm Shayna.
And I'm Tracy, and we are the creators of The Pump and Dump Show. We are moms, but we were women first. And in this podcast, we explore what it's like to be a woman who also happens to be a mom.
Before we were moms, we were women. Before we were moms, we were chilling. We were pumping and dumping. We're talking about something. This is the Pump and Dump Podcast.
Welcome back, breeders. Welcome to the Pump and Dump
back.
Podcast.
Pump and Dump podcast. So I am so behind on my holiday shopping. It's like unreal. I've done cards. I've done the photo books, but I have not made it. I've started like carts, like Amazon carts. But did you guys know, you should know this, that if your kid has a Fire, like an Amazon Fire or an Amazon Kindle, they can see your carts, your Amazon account. So like,
That's bogus.
we just discovered, thank God we discovered it in time, but my daughter did see one of the Hanukkah presents that I had ordered for her and brought it up because it actually pinged her a notification.
That's ridiculous.
And you can't take it off. So I had to start a new account, get a free month of Prime
That's
just to do my Christmas.
Amazon, come on. If you want to own the world, you got to let us like shop for our kids and not let
Yeah.
their tablets that you also own.
So that kind of sucked. So
That's-
that's what I'm dealing with right now.
Oh, yeah. I have yet to do a Christmas card in my adult life. Every year I think I'm going to do it, and I just never do it.
But to your credit, that's because you have like 200 other things to do for Christmas.
Well, so does everybody else.
Well, I don't have
Yeah,
8 meals
I
to
don't know.
cook, and so
It's just me. And then I had these really lofty hopes of making a lot of my Christmas presents this year. And I have all of the stuff, and I have like half of it in process of being made. And I just don't see how I'm going to work it out in the end to get it for everybody.
it could be a New Year's present.
Which means like on the 20th, I'm going to be running around to my least favorite place, which is the mall, trying to find things, which I don't want to do.
Ugh.
And I've
See,
also,
all of our family's out of town, so
you have to plan.
I am so screwed right now for like sending the books with presents. So I'm gonna have to send Amazon presents
Oh,
that
yeah.
are gonna arrive separately.
Yeah.
with our photo. It's so
Yeah.
overwhelming. Does anyone else
is.
want to cry right now? Is basically what I'm asking.
But Christmas is fun.
It is, and we just want to start this podcast by reminding you guys that a really good gift idea might be to get your friends tickets to the Pump and Dump Show.
It really is a good idea. I mean, if you guys, I don't know, we talked about this last podcast, but if you do buy presents for your girlfriends, your best friends, what better gift than to like have a date night together in the future and just give them, buy you and her tickets and have a little mommy bestie date night at the Pump and Dump Show.
Yeah, so go to
a
our
good
tour
gift.
page because you can see where we're going to be, and then there's
Everything's on sale.
You can also get our book, Parentally Incorrect, on Amazon, shipped really easy. So that's a good gift.
Yeah, and they're always lowering that thing. That's like half the time
think
it's
it's
under $10. So
Yeah.
I mean, just add that to whatever, and you're out. It's like a book.
And it will fit in a stocking, just so you know.
Yeah, it's very malleable.
It's malleable. It's small.
And then we've got our breeder hats, which everyone loves, and our breeder T-shirts, which are so cozy. And those black ones, we can't say it enough. Everybody looks good in them. They're just the most flattering T-shirt.
No
And
matter
they're-
what size of boobs.
True. And between Shay and I, we run the spectrum.
We do.
So,
I'm on the little side.
and I am not.
So yeah, we just wanted to throw that out there before we get to this conversation with our special guest, who I'm pretty excited to talk to her.
So we're bringing on a woman, Debbie Scheer, who's a great friend of ours, who I personally admire very much, who is just so darn funny as a comedian. I just can't say
good
enough great things of
storyteller.
her talent. And she just has a very interesting life story, and we're excited to share it with you.
We got a special guest. Special guest.
All right, we are here with a very special guest. I think we almost started this podcast like in hopes that we would be able to have Debbie
Just to have
Scheer
Debbie on all the time.
because she's one of our favorite people.
If you guys have been Colorado listeners, you've likely seen her at one of our shows. And she headed up our Mother's Day show last year at the Paramount, and she's come on. She was with us in Phoenix a few years ago. You did a set.
Yeah, she's our favorite guest
Yeah.
when we used to have guests.
Right.
And she has an amazing, interesting life, and that's why we've brought you here. That's why we've trapped you here.
I love being trapped with you.
So we're introducing Debbie Scheer, speaker, humorist, comedian, and also really awesomely an auctioneer as well.
And a mom.
And a mom. And she's a mom, which is why she's here.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We have so many things to talk to you about because you live this kind of fascinating life for, I don't know if it's just because we've got like boring traditional families, but you don't. So let's start there.
Okay. I don't have a typical traditional family, as you both know. I have 2 adopted boys. My ex-wife and I adopted them. Well, they're 11 and 8, and they were both adopted when they were just wee little things. I think 2 days and 5 days old.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Right?
And
so
they're
big
brothers.
now.
They're birth.
So, no, that is a great question. That's a great question. They are not biological brothers.
Okay.
Right. But they are brothers.
Sure.
Which comes up a lot. And
Yes.
And I love that question because I was at Costco once, not just once, a lot.
You love you some Costco.
I love Costco. We've been members since 1979.
Oh my gosh, I love that
is-
you know that.
Which is,
Do you have like some special, like, do you have like a platinum card with them? Like,
I do have a fancy card with Costco.
Debbie is
Sorry.
94 years old.
I'm 94.
also, did anyone know Costco was around in 1979?
It was called Price Club. And the other thing, what I've done now is hijacked this podcast, and my secret dream has come true. It's called the Costco Hour. So thank you
Shut
for joining
up.
us, everybody. We're going to just do a Costco podcast.
On
Is
it.
that okay?
Absolutely.
It's our favorite. We're all Kirkland all the time.
I mean,
love
all
that.
the time.
Well, I told my mom that when she passed, which she did 2 years ago, that we should just have her service at Costco. She didn't think it was funny.
Oh, she
but-
didn't? Did you buy her a Costco pie, though? Because those things are money. Not her. You're...
No, exactly. I didn't. We didn't. But
Wait, let me tell you, the reason that I asked if they were brothers is because you had posted something recently that said, now I get it. In your post, you had been like, yes, they are brothers, but you just meant brothers.
Right. Well, so thank you for getting me off the Costco train
Jeez,
and back
Shayna.
into reality. But
Leave
the story
Costco.
Was, we were at Costco and we had walked by one of those fabulous people who are sampling, and she shouted out because she didn't have a filter, she didn't know,
Right.
and she said, "Are they real brothers?"
Yeah.
Oh.
And I think what she asked in her defense, because I think these questions are innocent enough, are they biologically related? And the answer is no, they're not biologically related, but of course they're real brothers.
Of course
Right?
they
Of
are.
course.
But it's fascinating that people don't just instantly go there, that we place so much emphasis on, well, there has to be some sort of bloodline to sort of validate a family. And it's so untrue. I mean, especially so many families hate each other. So,
Sure. That's
blood's
absolutely
the
true.
last thing you want,
Yeah, that's true. And I'm adopted and I have adopted siblings. So
Right.
for our family adoption, and I do this joke and nobody likes it, and I still do it, which is like the cardinal sin in comedy is you
We'll
should
be the
just
judge.
learn to let a
Welcome
joke
to the
go.
Pumpin' Up Show.
It's just, I always say, and I try to do it when I do adoption workshops in comedy, adoption is just kind of in our DNA. Get it? Adoption, DNA. Okay, see, it's not a good joke.
don't know if
I'm
I
not
get
that,
it.
why don't I get it?
Well, DNA and adoption, they don't really go hand in hand because we don't share the same DNA.
Oh.
But okay, never
But is
mind. I'm good.
DNA, are the letters in the word adoption?
That's what I was thinking.
No, I'm talking about your genetic coding.
But where's the joke?
All right, you know what? I'm just going to say the fact that you asked where's the joke lets me know that there is no joke in
On the
The
it.
fact that Trace and I were both trying to spell the word adoption in our head, going the DNA.
Like, I'll admit I'm usually the last on a lot of uptick jokes, but that was...
And I wish your security camera was working to capture your face right now because it's
pretty
amazing.
awesome.
Anywho, the point is, I'm going to let that joke go. But adoption was just such a part of my story and our family story that it seemed like a natural direction for us to go in.
I
Also,
love that.
we've met your parents, and they're like 4 feet tall.
Yes.
So that it made a lot of sense when I realized you were adopted.
And Debbie is like this, like, I was going to say Nordic goddess, but that actually is not even
No.
remotely true.
She's very tall. She's quite tall.
Well, no, that's where the tall part goes. But you're like this beautiful, glowing, tall. adopted.
And I thought Nordic people tended to be more on the blonder side.
They are.
I'm
No, that's what, it was more just the Nordic.
Oh, and the
tall
wooden
part.
shoes. The wooden shoes
I
that
do
she
wear
wears.
No,
wooden
let's
shoes.
let's scrap Nordic. Let's scrap Nordic altogether.
We'll leave that
She's
alone.
just very tall and beautiful.
Okay, back to your story. So you are a single mom.
Yes.
You are divorced.
Correct.
You were married when you adopted the boys.
Yes.
How long were you married?
We were together because marriage was not legal in the state
Right.
of Colorado, but we were married for trust me, our
Sure.
marriage lives would look very similar,
Okay.
which is less than exciting, I'm sure. Yeah, anyways, we were together almost 11, 12 years.
Okay.
And we have been divorced. It will be 6 years in February. Yeah.
And do you guys co-parent?
We
I know
do.
that I'm asking that because I know the answer
Yes.
Okay.
a bit.
We do. We do co-parent.
Okay.
We have different parenting styles, which is okay. That happens whether you're together or not. But we do co-parent. She's a great mom. She loves her children dearly. She's
Well,
a great,
that's the
and
most
we
important.
have good communication, which is important. We
That's
get
good.
along, which is really
Yeah, you're
key.
lucky.
We're
Yeah,
just
that's
different
good.
humans, right? We're all different people. So
So you were adopted. So you felt then very strongly that adoption was going to be your path, or
well, that's interesting. I am adopted, so I felt that I would be really comfortable choosing adoption, which I am, but we actually did try to get pregnant. I did, unsuccessfully, obviously. And
Well, you need some semen.
you do need semen. Now that is that's where our downfall was.
That's
Maybe
what
that was
I'm
the
just telling
mistake.
you. That might
we
have been what
tried and
happened.
tried, and it just never.
So much fucking, and it just never ever worked.
And there's only so much you can do with a Vitamix, so it's tricky. But we did have semen. Actually, you need the sperm in the semen. Is the other
You're correct.
is the other interesting piece. But I tried to get pregnant and I couldn't. And so I thought I would be one of those people that just very careful, just in a really casual, loving way, embraced adoption. And I did, but I had to first let go of society's, what is our society? What's the message about becoming pregnant? There's a lot of value
sure.
there as a woman. And even though I knew that was bullshit, I still had to work through that.
Yeah.
I really did. I mean, I really had to work through that.
There's a lot of value in having contractions, which I didn't have, and I get all the time. Like, well, you didn't, it's like you didn't really have a birth, It's
Gosh, who says
fascinating.
that? That's crazy.
It's just implied. You feel it. So I understand what you're saying. It's like, it's a tough thing to reconcile and move on to the next.
Yeah, I had to
Yeah.
release that, which was fine. And once we started, and the adoption process, our story is uniquely ours. Everybody has, it's just like birth. Everybody has their own unique story. And it was interesting.
Okay, so and the children that you've adopted, your children, your boys,
Who are brothers.
okay, are not little white boys.
They're not little white boys.
Let's talk about that.
Yes, they're beautiful black boys. My 11-year-old is black, and my 8-year-old is biracial. He's white and black.
Okay.
Yes.
And was that a conscious decision, or did you just ask for whoever showed up?
So in complete honesty, we were told back then, because we started the adoption process much earlier than when we actually adopted, because for us it took quite a while. We were given the message loud and clear that because we were gay, it would probably be a long, long wait for white kids. Also, I should add
my
that
God.
my ex-wife is biracial. And so that was important to us. I mean, we took that message to heart, and we didn't care. And we were given the message that there are more black babies waiting for adoption than there are white babies.
Okay.
So we said, we want to be a family.
Yeah, we
want
want
a little
babies.
baby.
We want
So,
babies.
That's awesome. Okay.
Okay. So now you're raising. So let's talk about that. So you live in Denver. I don't know why I keep bringing it up, but I think it's an interesting point because Denver is a very white city. I think there's a 2%
Ridiculously white.
African American population in Denver. So, you have your own set of challenges just in terms of culture. I mean, what's the word that I use?
Well, I think, yes, Denver, it doesn't have the same African American population that Detroit or other cities has, obviously, but there are, and this is somewhat surprising to people, there are actually quite a lot of Black people in Colorado, in Denver, but it's just making a conscious effort to get outside of our bubble and meet people. So that, yeah, it takes a little bit of effort, but it's worth it. And we also are lucky. We're very involved with our Heritage Camp, which is a camp for transracially adopted families. So there are 9 camps. We participate in the African Caribbean camp. So we have a community of white parents who are raising Black and biracial kiddos.
Oh, wow. But celebrating their heritage.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I watch This Is Us. So do probably every one of our.
Never seen it.
Never have
Me
one.
either,
Really?
Debbie.
So there, so she has a Black son. A white woman has a Black son.
Okay.
And there's this episode where they're at the pool, and there's like the community of. By the way, and it's just I feel like it's changed. I am embarrassed to say I do not know the correct terminology, but I don't think do you say African American anymore, or can I say Black in a respectful? I mean, I feel like. You'd say a Black person, correct?
Well, I can't answer that as a white woman, but
Sure.
I know that I have some friends who identify as African American and some friends who identify as Black, and so
Okay.
I think it's up to each individual to
Okay.
choose their identity.
So in
But
this,
what- but
in this
what do you-
conversation,
yeah.
like what would be the
Yeah.
most appropriate thing to say as we discuss This Is Us?
As we discuss this fantastically, devastatingly sad and gut-wrenching
Episode.
emotionally episode.
And so realistic to real life.
Well, no, I'm
you can say
getting there.
Black. I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to say Black. Okay. All right. So she has a Black son, and there's this, and the Black moms are very judgmental in this particular situation in this episode, which was like I think in the 70s, this flashback episode, or early 80s or something. So have you experienced any kind of negativity from the Black community being a white woman raising Black boys?
Great question. No.
That's awesome.
I haven't, and I'm going to be honest. When my oldest was adopted in Chicago, that's where he was born, and so we spent about 10 to 12 days waiting for transfer clearance to bring him back to Colorado. And so we put him in the little baby Bjorn every day and went into the city and walked around the city and did our thing. And we never had one negative experience by way of a Black individual, not one. We did have a lot of curiosity and interesting, kind of invasive questions from white people, but not from Black people. And that was just, again, our unique experience. I will tell you, the director of the agency did say this to us as we were leaving the agency to go back to our hotel. Now, you all know when you leave the hospital, it is for us, it was a very scary experience.
gosh, I can't even imagine.
You're taking a human home
with
from a
you.
hospital.
To a hotel, no less.
God.
To a hotel. And then on a plane, and then back to our lives in Colorado. And so of all the advice this director could have given us, all of the advice, she looked at me and she said, I'm going to tell you one thing. You better not let his skin get ashy, or you will be judged.
Oh.
I took that to heart. I was so terrified of having my son's skin be dry that I lubed him up. So
I don't understand why.
In her opinion, she felt like that was the worst thing we could do, was allow him to have dry skin, and we would be judged for it. And I thought, really, like, you're not going to talk about car seats,
Right?
Or formula, or vaccines, or any of the other things.
Was
that
she
are
saying
important?
that just as like a human baby, or as a Black baby?
A Black baby?
Because
She was saying this as a white mom,
okay,
adopting a Black baby. Like,
Was she Black, or was
she was also white?
Oh, interesting.
And-
Really?
Yes. And so I thought, wow, this is what she's chosen to share with us. So we really can't screw it up. So unfortunately, I am a pretty literal human. So I took that to heart. And I remember the day when I had to tone it down on the oil. I picked him up off the changing table, and he literally just slipped right out of my hands and just gently landed on the
you're like,
changing
mission
table.
accomplished.
I think I need to tone it down with the oil. It's going to be
That's
fine.
amazing.
Sure.
That is really surprising that was her choice of last.
Why do you think she said that?
Well, I think in her world and maybe in her experience and in Chicago, I don't know. She felt like, and maybe she had a misperception of Colorado. Maybe she thought we were actually drier than we are.
Yeah, she
We're
knows
pretty-
how dry it is
It
here.
is dry. It's a dry place. But that was so interesting to me. And that is really what resonates with me. Like that for her, in her world at that moment, that was the most important thing she could tell me.
So you say it was interesting, but did you have an emotional response to that? Were you offended? Were you?
I was a wide-eyed deer in headlights. I wasn't offended. I was trying to absorb everything.
Sure.
Because I thought, I'm taking this.
Yeah, you just-
this
just
is
had a
my
baby.
child.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah.
Right? How do I
Just-
parent? What do I do?
It doesn't
And
matter, apparently. Just get out the lotion. It's all going to be fine.
That's all you need to do. You don't even need to put them in a car seat. You just put them in the front seat as long as they're lubed. That's how I know.
That's crazy.
Just slide around the car.
So you got back to Colorado. Now, so you're adopted and all your siblings are adopted.
There are 4 of us and 3 of us are adopted. My youngest brother is biological.
Okay. And did any of your siblings adopt?
No.
Do they all have?
Wait, so your mom didn't think she could get pregnant and adopted 3 of you and then was like, oh shit.
Right.
Sorry, brother, that I just called you the mistake.
No. What's funny about that is I went my entire young life just really believing that my parents didn't have sex, which was glorious until she
Okay.
got pregnant, which burst my parents don't have sex bubble.
Sure.
I was devastated and totally grossed out.
Yeah.
And
Because you had to just, you
I
had to
say
face
they
that
had
one
sex
head on.
at least once.
Oh, wow.
They had it once.
They
just
had it a
once.
lot more than once, but
So your family, I'm assuming your family was like all in then with your decision.
Totally on board with adoption. But I'm going to also be honest. My parents did have, I don't know if I could say reservations, but they did probably spend some time thinking about, wow, my daughter, who is now identifies as a lesbian, which already sets her apart from a traditional family, is now adopting a black baby. So I think
Yeah.
as parents, they were a little bit,
What
you
were
know,
the conversations they had with you about that?
we didn't really engage in conversation. I don't know.
That's
It's so-
fascinating.
it's so complicated.
Wow. Okay, so then now raising the boys and they're school age now. They're 11 and how old did you say Charlie was? 8. Coming from again like more traditional family structures, like what are the biggest challenges? Or I feel like especially in the past couple of years, there's a lot more awareness to, the whole white privilege thing, and then my kids describe kids at their school. Just kind of by their shade of color, which I find I don't really know how to parent in that situation because, they'll say, oh, James, he's dark skinned. And then I'm like, okay, so I love that they really, in their brains, I feel like they see so much equality, but I'm trying to figure out the right way to teach my kids to.
Well, there's two questions to that, right? There's, you being a white woman raising black boys, and then there's raising black boys in today's society. They're kind of two different race discussions, I would imagine. So I think what you're asking is,
How aware are they being in kind of like this diverse, open-minded world that I'm assuming your household is, of kind of what's happening in society and like how do you address that to
Right.
such young people?
Great question. So our house is just our house. I mean, we're, how do I explain it? They don't know anything else. It's like you
Right.
don't know what you don't know. So they know that they have, Sydney knows that his brother is lighter skin than he is. We talk about that a lot. I mean, Charlie's coloring is more like, a really yummy latte with a lot of almond milk. We're very clear. There's a book, Colors of Us, which does a lot of that. It talks about just shades of skin. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's reality. I mean, the 3 of us sitting at this table, we have different skin tones. They are aware of what's going on around them, for sure. They are aware, especially Sydney, they don't go to a school with a lot of black kids. And so they're aware of that. They are. They haven't come home and said, I'm having issues related to this, because I don't think developmentally they would know how to communicate that, but they do in other ways. And Sydney has told us, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, I don't like being the only one in my class. I feel different. That's a real thing for him. And so we have to work around that. I think being a white mom and raising black boys, and I tell this to people, the only experience I know is that of a white woman. And now a white woman raising black boys. I will never know what it's like to be a black person, ever, obviously.
Sure.
Right.
But I know what it's like to be a mom, and I know what it's like to be a mama bear, for sure. And I know right now in our society, I feel my hackles raised even more than they have been in the past. And so it's an interesting time.
It is interesting because their black experience is very different than someone who grew up in a black family. And how do you honor that, but also respect that their experience is different, because it is.
And what's interesting is I have white privilege. We all do. If you're white, you have white privilege. You have to understand that first and foremost. And when my children are with me, they are protected by the umbrella of my white privilege. It's just the way it is. And so as I see my oldest get older and start to look more like a young black man, and as he's not with me, he doesn't have that white privilege. And that's very scary for me as a mom.
I bet.
Because
You don't
look at this world we're
Sure.
living in right now. It's not a safe place for black kids, black boys in particular. It's just not. And so
And at what point is he going to start to hear those stories and have them resonate on a more personal level and like actually sink in?
And we talk about that a lot. We talk about, and I hate saying this to him, but this is just the reality. I tell him, take your hood off. You cannot wear your sweatshirt hood on. You can't have it on. You just can't.
just breaks my
You
heart.
can't
Oh my
walk
gosh.
around with that. And we were at I can't remember what store, but he wanted to have the responsibility of going up and buying something on his own. And I was taking his brother to the restroom. So we walked through it, and I said, here's the money. You need to ask for a receipt. You have to have a bag, all of these things. Well, of course, sure enough, because he's an 11-year-old boy, he walks up to the bathroom, and I come out, and he's standing there with the item, no receipt, and no bag.
Oh, God. And you're worried.
And I'm
Sure.
worried.
Yeah.
And we had to have a very real conversation about
that's
perception.
horrible.
He knows what he didn't do anything wrong.
Didn't do anything wrong.
Nothing wrong. But how do people perceive a young black child in a store holding
my
an
God.
item without a receipt in a bag?
Well, and so this is the thing, right? So, my kids, I want them to know that exists, and it's never going to happen, or to them, but it exists. And so this colorblind idea that we're raising our kids to just that everybody's equal is like, it's a fantasy. It's not actually what exists. So
Well, you can raise people. It's not a fantasy to think that everyone's equal.
no, that's not what I mean. I mean this
But everyone looks different. I mean, I think that's.
I think raising kids, I think there was a comfort, and it felt good to say I'm colorblind, because the concept, when people say that, they truly want to believe everybody's equal. I don't see color.
Right.
But it's harmful, I think, to raise kids and to believe as a parent that children are colorblind, that we're colorblind. It doesn't exist. You see color, and if you truly don't see color, then you're really erasing people who are different from you.
Right,
Which
that's
is
what I
really
was trying to
harmful.
say.
Exactly. So I think it's important to, I always compare it to this. I taught sex ed for many years, and I would have parents call me when their kids were 11 or 15, and they'd say, okay, we're going to have a talk. What books should I get? How do
Right.
I do this? And I thought,
Let's make it a huge deal right now.
well, you should have done it 14 years ago is when you should have started.
Yeah.
The concept of sexuality, we don't sit our kids down and have one conversation and then close the book and never address it again.
Right.
We
Oh,
start
we
when
do.
they're- Okay, you do.
maybe.
We're going
No,
to talk about that
no,
after.
no, not
okay.
me. The collective we.
The collective way. Okay, I don't like that idea.
Sure,
we need to
me either.
change that.
Yeah,
But
no, I hear you.
we don't do that. Most of us don't do that. Hopefully, we talk to our kids. We start to use medically correct terms when they're little, before they even know language. And I think that's the same with race. Is you have to talk about it daily in ways that aren't these huge conversations, but that are infused throughout your entire workings as a family.
Right.
I mean, my daughter, I think I was telling you, so my daughter's school is incredibly diverse, like so diverse. There's no holidays because there's just too many religions in any classroom to even celebrate Halloween. So on one level, she's extremely aware of that. And that's one of the reasons why we picked that school. But it's also quantifiers for her friends. And like, is that okay? Is that okay for her to...
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with age.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very real for kids to go, that's my brown friend.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean they're a racist. It's just that's how they move through the world up until a certain point. I mean, you don't want to have your 18-year-old going, well, here's my brown friend. Really? I don't know. I mean,
Sure.
it's one way to identify someone. And depending upon their age, I think it's a very real, natural way. But I think as parents, we say, well, what are some other ways? You know, what are some other things about your friend Jennifer that you notice? And she probably has 16 other things that she notices.
I know, and that's always been I've always knee-jerked, like when someone's like, oh, you're talking about someone, oh, are they black? I'm like, is that, I get it on one level because you're just trying to like visualize that person. But on the other hand, is that really, can it be a quantifier or just an innocent, as if saying, like me, I'm always just sort of identified as tall. Is she the tall blonde? I'm the tall blonde. That's what everyone calls me. I feel like that's a little different than saying someone is black or brown. But I also get it just on a very like empirical level that it's just a description. But I think it carries with it a lot of weight that I think, like you're saying, our kids don't necessarily carry, but will as they grow older.
Exactly. I think they will. I mean, here's an example that I called my mom out several years. My mom's amazing. And this is the thing. I mean, you can have people in your life that do this and they're still wonderfully loving people and you love them so much. My parents, when they would come to Colorado, they'd stay at one hotel and there was a woman who worked there probably 25, 30 years that they became very friendly with. And she managed the cafeteria or the restaurant. And my mom would tell the same story every time she would see me. It's as if I had forgotten from the year before, 6 months, which is probably true. She knows me. She knew me pretty well. She would say, well, you know that lovely black woman who runs the restaurant. And I finally asked her, I said, Mom, why do you always preface it with lovely black woman? You never do that with white people.
Exactly.
And for me, when I hear you say that, it's almost as if you can't believe that a lovely person could be black, which is not how my mom thought. And she was upset when I brought that up. But it's just an awareness. She wasn't even aware that she was doing that. It's just part of how she was identifying that individual. And I think just becoming aware, like, would you use that qualifier if that person was white?
No.
Probably not.
Sure. Like Chris's entire family just refers to me as his Jewish wife.
Is he not Jewish?
No, his name is Christopher. And they're from the South. And it was like, I'm sure they're like, well, Chris married a Jewish girl and lives in Colorado. I mean, I'm positive it is the identifier.
Yeah.
I know.
It's almost like they're shocked that you could. Did they say the nice Jewish girl?
No, I'm sure they're like the funny Jewish girl. And then everyone's
Jewish
like,
girl.
well, all the Jews are funny. Let's be honest.
Oh, yeah. We are. No, that's obvious.
You're not even really Jewish.
I'm not Jewish. I'm a Roman Catholic and Jewish.
Catholics are hilarious.
Okay, so I have a double funny DNA somewhere in
There
there.
you go. Let's go with that joke.
DNA.
Okay, that's better.
DNA and adoption.
But then like if you're foreign, even if you're from England, you would say, oh, that
The British
lovely
guy.
British woman. My mother-in-law is Scottish, and she's often like, oh, that sweet little Scottish lady. It's literally how she's described. But we're just in a testy time because you couldn't say if my mother-in-law was a sweet
Chinese woman.
or even like someone from Syria. You wouldn't call her the sweet little Syrian lady, and sort
I
of.
might.
But would it
Are
come
you
off?
Chinese?
Can't you tell?
But I do think, and you're right, how we're trying to be aware and accepting and hope that we raise, I think ultimately as moms, we want to raise our children to be better and move through the world in the best light possible. And I do feel strongly about this. As white people, we have to first recognize our white privilege. We cannot hope that our children will move through the world any different than we have if we don't own it and understand it and can communicate about it.
And maybe this is the white girl saying this. Is there a time where we can embrace our differences, all of them, men, women, gay, straight, black, white, whatever, and embrace them while also being equal, or is that not even a possibility because of like I've just come from a long lineage of white people? That's where my head starts to spin a little
Well,
bit.
I read something last night about an exercise that, of course, I'll never do with my children, but they were suggesting on the subject of race, where you would take like a bunch of string and you would create an entire like web of string in a room,
This sounds like a craft.
right?
I'm
It's
already
a craft.
I'm
You're
already
out. She's
against
out. Oh, a
crafting.
craft. Oh, but you could get the string at Costco, so
Yeah.
you're already
And then can I
happy.
have someone
And
do
you
it? Okay.
cross and make this big web in the room, and then you try to untangle it. And this is kind of the concept of where we are today in this idea of teaching our children about race, because essentially the web was a lot easier to create than it is to untangle. And so I don't know, again, I think just you recognizing that it's something that you need to learn more about is a step in the right direction. Correct?
I agree. And I think it's, at the end of the day, it makes white people really uncomfortable. I mean, as a white woman, I have to be able to say, I'm white, therefore I contributed to this institutionalized racism that is harming my children. And that sucks to have to say that. But that's true. If you're white, you are we created this. Black people didn't create it.
Yeah.
They just didn't. So I look at it like it's up to me, it's up to white people to fix it.
How are you fixing it though?
Right. Well, that's now you're asking the $1 million question. And I think it does come like truly understanding your white privilege, really, really looking at, and it is uncomfortable to dismantle that. It's not easy. It just isn't. But and for me, I feel really heavily invested in that because I have 2 children that are suffering the ramifications of racism. So I am invested in making those changes. But
So
what are the I mean, like what? I mean, I know that's like I know it's the $1 million question, but pragmatically for our listeners, like if you're just taking a deep look at yourself into the mirror for the first time, like what are some of those? Where do you start?
Right. So I just read a book, and we're doing some book clubs on this, called So You Want to Talk About Race? It's a great book, and I love it because it was written by a woman who is not white, and it's very accessible. Because as white people, let's be honest, we get real testy when people push us a little too far. It's like protest, but protest in this way. Do this, stand up, but stand up in a way that still makes us feel comfortable. And
sure.
so this book, I feel, is very accessible for people who do want to start having those conversations about race. And really, it's meant to have those conversations with, I think, other white people. Because we're the ones that need to do the work. So I think it's finding the books that can help you dig a little bit deeper and take those steps, whatever those steps. I feel strongly, I mean, you meet people where they're at. You push people too far and they check out, and then it's a non-issue. You can't really reach them again. But if you just allow people to do the things in this, while still gently guiding them, it's like parenthood, right? We're guiding our kids in a direction without.
Well, and essentially, isn't that it, right? These children that we're raising, and slowly over time, the more we can educate people in the correct way, then humans essentially can evolve. I mean,
Well, but not to sound like an asshole, but like, what is the correct way? I know that obviously my daughter should never look down on anyone. But what is the correct way?
I think just having conversations alone. There was a time my parents never talked to me about this stuff.
No, sure.
And
Mine
that's
either.
not very long ago. So I guess what I'm saying is like that untangling of that web just like takes a lot of time. And just the more we educate ourselves, the more we can have open conversations with our children.
I mean, and I think asking young people, and the maturity level of your daughter, you have a good understanding of what she can handle and what she can't, to say, what does it mean to be white? That's a very fair question.
So that's what I'm getting at, because I like that. Like that's something that's a conversation I can have with my daughter, that I think she would understand. And the cynic of me is asking, so you think that is the small steps towards change where we get to a place where we don't have this sort of entrenched racist point of view in our country?
Well, we're always going to have a racist point of view in our country. That's just the reality. We're always going to have people who are racist. I have friends of color who feel strongly that if you are white, you are just inherently racist.
Oh.
And I don't. That to me, I
It's a little
can't answer.
negative.
A
I
little
can't
much.
answer that. But I think it's fair to say we will always have racism in this country. We will always have people who are racist in this country. It's just.
In all countries. I mean,
we'll also
there's many
always
more
have
countries that are.
sexism and
Well, sure.
you know, just the difference in our views on homosexuality, or even that the sexual spectrum or gender spectrum, just how far we've come. It's not solved by any means,
Right.
but the fact that my kids like literally think anyone could get married,
Right.
you know, that that's just okay
Absolutely.
and so accepted into our day-to-day structure, you know, we can only hope that in time, you know, the understanding of the cultural disadvantages that so many races in this country
Right.
experience, you know, can be understood as well.
And it's if you look at your daughter, who's very smart and very mature, you know, she's mature intellectually, to be able to have those conversations with her. So she then is going to turn around to her white friends and for lack of a better phrase, call them out and push them to be better and push them to really look at who they are. And that's, I think, slowly. So like you were talking about same-sex marriage. I'm sure there are people who really care and it's really a problem for them, but our kids?
No, yeah.
So, Debbie, at some point, you became a comedian, a humorist. Would you say you were a comedian first, and then you kind of found your speaking?
I would say
you kind of
so.
transitioned out
I
of
mean,
that.
I always spoke on adoption, but I would say yes. I got into comedy when I was going through my divorce, and I was so terrified.
Because divorce is hilarious.
It's hilarious. It's so hilarious. But what it was for me was really terrifying. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I was so it was a really highly emotional time for me, as it is for most people. And I thought, I had this little idea in my head, which now that I look back was so ridiculous. I thought, well, if you're going through something scary, you should probably do something even scarier to take your mind off the first scary thing.
Oh, I don't think that's ridiculous.
Okay, good. So I thought, what would be really scary? I'd always written comedy. I love comedy. I love sketch comedy. I grew up on Carol Burnett and all those things. But I thought, I'm going to try stand-up. That would be scarier than my divorce.
Terrifying.
I mean, that is.
Stand-up is pretty terrible. You know, it was
Sure.
intense. And what I didn't expect to happen was to do my 5-minute set and come off the stage going, oh my gosh, I'm okay. I'm still here. Because I honestly thought when I was walking up from the green room, I thought I'm going to shit my pants and I'm going to vomit. And then I thought I'm going to do it at the same time.
And then you're going to fall, and then,
And
yeah.
that's comedy, ladies and
That
gentlemen.
is it.
right there.
That's my set right there. And so goodbye. Thank you. Come again. And anyways, it was really the spark that I needed to let myself know I'm going to be okay. Through this divorce, through all of it, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to find my way. It's fine. And so it was a lot of breakup comedy, I call it.
Do you remember one
Sure.
of your first jokes?
Oh, they were so bad that I only remember now being shocked that anyone invited me back onto
That's
the
hilarious.
stage. And I do remember a comic in Denver gave me great advice. It was during an open mic, and I'd walked up to the stage, and he said, now remember, when you get a laugh, leave. Because you want them to want you to come back. Well, because like I said, I'm pretty literal. I didn't get any laughs, so I stayed on stage. I don't know.
You filibustered the stage.
37
So
minutes.
yeah, I had a catheter. I was standing up. I was wearing tennis shoes.
She's ordering Grubhub.
It was amazing. But it was great advice that he gave. I just didn't really understand it at the time.
That's
So
really funny.
when you call yourself a speaker or when you became a speaker, is that just out of ignorance? Is that because you wanted to speak about more serious things and you kind of enjoyed being in front of people? Or was it natural? I mean, when you speak, what do people usually hire you to speak about
Right.
besides adoption?
So I wanted to get into speaking because I believe so strongly, and this started with adoption, that within everything, there's this, you can weave in humor. It exists through everything. And the more we can find the humor in these situations, I feel like it kind of elevates the experience. Some people would say if you joke about things, if you look at them through a humor-filled lens, you dilute it. And I feel the exact opposite. So I wanted to show people that the journey to becoming a family by way of adoption yes, it has so much, but there's also really funny moments within that journey that a lot of people overlook because it's so intense becoming a family. And so that's really how I do all of it. Through mental health, I have anxiety and depression. I wanted to weave through my humor through that, through grief. I mean, we talked about I lost my mom 2 years ago, which really just was the most intense thing I've ever gone through. But there's still nuggets of humor within those really dreadfully sad experiences. So that's typically what I speak on. And starting over. I mean, I was, a stay-at-home mom when my ex-wife basically said, I'm not in love with you anymore and I don't want to be with you.
Hilarious.
That's hilarious. I mean, that is funny.
That's real funny.
That's funny.
Deb.
But there is a sense of beauty that comes from this shocking experience and knowing that you're going to have this new direction that occurs.
Right.
And you just had to pull yourself together and get through it for your babies.
For my babies, and because quite frankly, your friends are only going to come wipe your ass and feed you. You can only be in the fetal position so long before they say, get up.
Yeah.
Right?
Ugh, gosh.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you found comedy because it's how we found you.
Yeah.
That's right. And you want to know the funniest thing? I love this story, which you may or may not know, because Kristen Rand suggested that you reach out to me.
Yeah.
And you did. I love her. And I remember you were so laid back and so loving and just come and do comedy. And I thought, oh my gosh, do they know I'm gay? What if they care if I'm gay?
oh my-
I
oh
should
my
probably
gosh,
tell them
that's
that I'm a lesbian. I
really
mean, my
funny.
comedy is kind of gay, and I don't know if they're going to like this. And I remember meeting you. I think the first time was it at the Clock Tower. The first time,
Probably that is the weirdest thing that
That's
you've
the
ever
strangest
said.
thing
I think it
ever.
was. And I remember backstage and I said, Shayna, do you know I'm a lesbian? Is that okay? And you were like, just, what are you talking about? You didn't care.
Well,
but I
of
didn't
course.
know, right? I didn't know what you were going to care about or
I
not.
can't
Well,
even
that's-
imagine
but-
worrying that
I know.
somebody's going to care when you're on their
But
show.
that's amazing. We just had this entire conversation, about hoping to get to this place. And here you are, with your peers who, on one level you sort of think the same way as
She
you.
didn't know us.
No,
Yeah.
but then you still default to what if they,
What if?
oh my gosh, that's fascinating.
What if they hate it? What if I say something
Well, I
too
mean,
gay? What does that even mean?
If you
I
had
don't
done
even know what that
if
means.
you had done that DNA joke, you would have never come back. But
I am let this be known. It's now said publicly. I'm retiring the adoption DNA joke.
Changing it to the gay DNA.
It's
joke.
now the gay DNA. Oh my gosh. Do they know? Okay. But I love
that's
that
funny.
story. And then, it took me 2 seconds meeting both of you where I realized they're not going to give a shit.
She actually thought we were gay.
I mean, that does happen.
I was hopeful. Wildly disappointed. But you have
sorry,
fabulous
sorry.
partners. And so,
We do.
that's
Apologies.
what it is.
So I think I've always been interested knowing you as a comic and then kind of seeing all these other things that you're doing. You became you became an auctioneer at one point.
You
and
can't
you
even
do
say it
you
with a
do
straight
do
face.
it.
I do.
And
auctioneer.
can you give us a little bit?
I can't. I can't do that on
That is the
command.
worst
It's
as
so-
a comedian. I mean, how much do you hate
It's
it?
different. It's like this. It's like this.
That's
skill.
not true. It's like performing.
It
You
is
got to be in the
perform-
moment.
you gotta be in the
man.
moment.
Yeah, you got to feed off the crowd. You got to
love-
feel the money going up and up. And
Can Tracy and I bid for something? Would that be helpful? It's not like a party trick. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, it's funny that you asked that, but I did. I became an auctioneer a couple of years ago because I really wanted to combine humor.
And you host basically when you're the auctioneer.
well,
right?
you're like the world's greatest MC. I mean,
Yeah.
you're the dream.
Oh,
you're the
that is
whole
so
package.
sweet.
You guys,
Thank
we
you.
had
especially because you're Nordic, so it just have it.
I am tall, blonde, and I wear. Yes, and I have a lot of wooden shoes.
I don't
that
even
the
think that's
same?
Nordic
Is
at
that
all. I
Nordic?
think
That's not
we've
Nordic.
offended more people than in our conversation about race.
We have.
So
We're looking at you, the tall blonde lady. Is that offensive?
she clops off.
I am literally allowed. I am not allowed to be offended by anything. I think in my.
And so the auctioneering allowed you to learn a crazy skill. Did I call it crazy?
You did, but it's such a unique skill. I went to
Yeah.
auctioneering school, which is a thing. A lot of people don't know that. It
How
was,
many people were in your class?
we had a relatively small class, so I think there might have been 50-ish, 60.
That seems like a lot.
It does seem like a lot,
Holy-
but there are, classes that go up to over 100 people.
Is it male dominated, female
Auctioneering
dominated?
is very much a male dominated industry. I think right now 14% of auctioneers are female.
Okay.
And that's up quite a bit. I mean, it was 2% not that long ago. So it's definitely a field where females are taking charge, which is awesome. And I only work with nonprofits and schools, so I only do benefit auctioneers. So I'm not a cattle or a car auctioneer.
I forgot that there was other kinds of auctioneers.
They're
right.
amazing. I
Gotcha.
went to school with a lot. I went to school with a young man who I think he was 17, and he was a third-generation cattle auctioneer.
Oh, that's really
Wow.
cool.
It was really great. And I have to tell you something about auctioneering school. And this was a good lesson for me to check my shit at the door, because I went in with a lot of preconceived notions. Because you know me, I'm one of the more liberal people that I know. And I thought, oh, they're auctioneers. They're all going to be one way. They're all going to be. And we were, while it was true that we were incredibly different on the political spectrum and many other things, I made some lifelong friends. And I would never have met these people
I love that.
if it hadn't been for this school. Ever.
I was just about to.
Oh, dear.
I was just about to make the joke. You made lifelong friends, but you did. You made lifelong friends.
I
there.
did.
I don't know why I find that so funny.
I mean, I met people. How would I ever have met these people?
No, that's what's so fascinating.
So is there like a dark side to auctioneering? Is there
I don't know why I've made up this whole fantasy in my head.
A lifelong. What does that mean to you? You're giggly. You're a giggle pants right now. What does that
sorry.
look like?
Nothing.
I made some solid friends.
I love it.
Good
into
friendships.
That's great.
I think. Maybe not after this. I don't know.
Sorry,
Everybody
I
will
ruined
laugh
it
at-
for
not
you.
you, but just
They're like, we like you except for your association with the Pump It Up
Yeah,
show.
they obviously.
No, but seriously, is there like a dark side to auctioneering? Is there drugs and sex, and is there cheating and scandal? I don't know. I don't know. Every industry has its like.
Oh my god.
Am I just being overly dramatic?
I
right
mean,
now?
I don't know if that exists, but if it does,
Are
I
there
wanna
like
go
diva
undercover.
auctioneers that have like green room demands? And I mean, do people skim off the top? I don't know. Like, it feels like it could be like a really like cool documentary.
Where do you think people? What
I
is
don't know.
happening here? What's happening right
Overactive
now?
imagination.
I love that about
It's just
you.
whenever something's totally strange to us, like we don't know a lot about
Yeah.
it, we like to imagine like the craziest drama.
I love all of that.
Like, I feel like Baz Luhrmann could make a movie like a follow up to Strictly Ballroom, but it's about auctioneering.
Oh, I like that.
Like, people are all cutthroat and like, I don't know. Do you vie for jobs? Is it jealous?
We do.
Is it
I mean,
competitive?
it is a competitive industry, and of course, you are going up against other auctioneers for jobs. Absolutely.
Well, and like one of your best friends just became an auctioneer.
I know.
So was that?
Yeah, was
did
that
you feel
weird?
a little bit
my
like?
comedy wife. No, we had been talking about that for a long time, and I said, "You need to go to auctioneering school."
Oh, you had her go.
I encouraged her. I didn't.
I love
I
that.
mean, I don't boss her around that much.
Sure.
She doesn't let me, but I encouraged her, and she did it, and I love it. Because I want more women in the industry to
Yeah.
represent the industry. That's an important thing for sure. And I want more women who I trust in the industry.
And how do you get what's the word? Cast, chosen, hired? How do you get hired?
Hired, yeah.
How do you get hired? Do you submit a tape? Like, is there?
You can, yes. So I do a lot of my auctioneering contracting through Reggie Rivers, who owns Auction Fundraising Academy, and he is an amazing guy. I love him and his company. But I also have clients that I've gotten on my own that are kind of my legacy clients that I keep, and a lot of them, they might see me at an event,
And then
and
sure.
then they say, "Oh, can I have your card? We have an event coming up." And so
I imagine,
that's
that's
typically
probably your best calling card. Yeah.
What do your kids think?
Oh my God. My kids, I don't know how your children feel about what you do. They think I am still the most ridiculous human on the
Yeah,
planet.
basically.
I embarrass them to no end. I mean, here's an interesting, funny story. I'll try and make it quick about just reading too much into things and just thinking too much about it. My kids are so different, as yours are probably as well. And my youngest wants me to come to school and have lunch with him. He's very loving, very affectionate. My oldest is like, don't even look at me. I don't. And so I was at school for my youngest, saw my oldest, went to hug him. He was mortified. He didn't even want to address me. And I went home and created this entire story that he was ashamed of me because I was white.
Oh no, you're just his mom.
I did, exactly. But I perseverated on that for several hours before he came home. And then we had a conversation that night, and I said, "Are you embarrassed by me because I'm white?" And he, maybe deep down that's there, I don't know. But he looked at me and he said, "No, you're my mom.
And I'm 11. You're like my worst nightmare at school.
You're my worst nightmare. You do comedy for a living. You're an auctioneer. You've emceed our school fundraiser.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, honestly, could you just never come to school?" but right, it's what we perceive, what we put on it is not always what the
Sure.
reality is. So
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask. I mean, just for maybe for other moms. I mean, I in no way mean to diminish this. I mean, it can't be a full-time job because there's only so many nights you could do or events you could do in a week even, and there's only so many days that those events are on.
right.
Is this like a cool like part-time career choice? Is it something, I mean, for people out there maybe looking for a path and that their kids are a little older, like
Right.
how
That's
do you...
a great question. I love that question. So for me, auctioneering is actually the majority of my income.
Okay.
And auctioneering and speaking, because as you know, comedy, it's hard to make a really sustainable living in comedy. It just is. And so auctioneering is my career, really, and speaking. And auctioneering, though, is very seasonal. So there's a fall fundraising season and a spring fundraising season, and it's really busy. It's really, really busy during those times. There's some summer work, but it's not as busy, which is great for a mom because
Sure.
I don't have any gigs over the holidays. Perfect. And really, I'm trying to set up a life for my kids where I can take time off in the summer and be with them,
I love that.
much to their annoyance.
Well, it'll pay off when they're older.
I hope so.
I love that. That's
Yeah,
so cool.
it's for me, it's been a great career choice. It's really been, and I love it because I really get to combine all of my loves
Yeah.
into one career, and I love nonprofits.
Sure.
I mean, I've worked, in previous lives in the social justice and reproductive rights sector, so I love being able to give back.
Debbie Scheer is just changing the world, you guys. How can people find you?
Oh, and I do. Oh, thank you for that.
They just
I
have to listen to your wooden shoes clogging
If
down
you
the road.
hear me coming down
have made this whole
behind you at
fantasy.
Costco, I'll tell you how you can find me. You go to Costco on River Point, and that's pretty much where I'll be.
You
okay?
have no idea. This is going to sound ridiculous, but it's so absolutely true. We've been doing this show in Denver for 6 years. The place where I have been recognized the most, where I see people wearing our T-shirts, where people yell across the aisle. It is always at
Costco,
Costco
not
about the
even
Bubba Dub
Target.
show.
And do you
I
know
was just
why?
running into people at Costco.
Because it's the happiest place on earth. And I'd love it if we could do a live video from Costco because that would be my
Let's
fantasy land.
do that.
And
I have Costco anxiety. It doesn't. I love it, but it's too much for me.
Go with me. It'll be fine.
No,
It'll be
no.
so
I
fun.
mean, I
Oh, you love it. You're okay.
But it's a lot.
It's a lot. Oh, it is a lot.
Like I'm not that girl that can just go in and get dog food and leave. Like it's every
Do you
row.
know my parents used to go to Costco when they were. Well, let me just before I'll forget, and then I'll get in a lot of trouble. And I also do have a website. It's DebbieScheerSpeaks.com.
Okay, there
so
we
that's
go.
Good. But my parents used to go to Costco just to eat lunch.
Oh, Chris takes the kids to dinner there all the
See?
time.
And it's just and my dad will still. He's 83. It takes him 4 hours to walk into a Costco with his walker, and then another 6 to go to the back where the fruit, and then he'll get like one thing of lettuce, romaine lettuce, and leave.
He shouldn't get romaine.
He does. And you know what else he does? And I'm outing him, and I don't care. He wraps the romaine lettuce in tin foil and keeps it in the fridge because somehow he's been told that keeps it longer.
Does it?
No, I'm telling you, when I go home and visit,
And
I clean out
unwrap.
his fridge. I throw everything that's rotten away. I buy him new food and new things, and he yells at me. Why did you throw that mayonnaise away? Well, it expired in 2015.
Oh, that was my grandfather. Like
Yeah.
literally, like stared into the face of death eating 4-year-old mayonnaise.
But
every
he's
day.
still
He lived till he was
alive.
93. I
I
know. I
know.
can't say he was wrong.
He puts coffee mate creamer in his cereal, and he's going to outlive all of us.
Shut up.
I'm telling you,
That
it's
bums me out.
25 containers of coffee mate creamer in his fridge.
For cereal,
Mm-hmm.
that's hardcore.
He's going to outlive all of us.
Can I give you guys a mom hack though? Speaking of lettuce, found this on the gram. The best way to keep lettuce is you wash it.
I'm out.
Don't buy it from a box that's not very good for you. They gas it and
Out.
stuff,
I'm
and
out.
all the plastic. Yeah. But then you get the lettuce and you wash it, and then you pat it dry, and then you lay it in like a big like kitchen towel, and you roll it up, and then you tie the ends with like rubber bands, and that store it in your fridge that way, and it keeps forever.
What does forever mean?
Well,
8 hours?
oh no, like
4 days?
like a week, like
A week?
Yeah.
I don't know. That sounds like a craft. It involved rubber bands and a
It's
kitchen
in,
towel.
I can show you. I can show you. It's in my fridge
I
right
am going
now.
to look before we leave.
I like to open my mixed greens container. I like the sound it makes when I peel the plastic.
That's sharp with those sharp edges.
Yeah.
I agree. I like that.
I mean,
there
the
you
fact that I'm eating salad is my one step closer in that
This
scenario.
is true. Sure. I'm never going
That's
to.
a big deal.
Yeah.
Good for you. It's baby steps, meeting people where they're at and going from there.
And they're all at Costco. Is the basically
All the good ones.
Yeah.
all the good ones. Debbie, thank you so much for coming
you.
today. We love you so much. We have to have you back and talk more. We didn't even scratch the surface
I love you
of saving
too.
the world.
I love you both.
You guys don't even know how incredibly funny and talented this
Yeah.
woman is. So we will show you in many other ways.
We'll try
In our live Costco video.
on it.
Debbie Scheer Speaks. Thank you, Debbie. You're amazing.
Thank you.
So I feel like I learned a lot today in our conversation with Debbie.
I did. I learned a lot, and I also feel like I'm thinking about a lot, which is always a good thing to come out of
Right.
a conversation.
And that's mainly like her point, right? Like the
Yeah.
more we start thinking about this stuff, the more the world will eventually. That's not true. She's saying be proactive, I think.
Well, I did like one thing she said to us offline, which was, I think everyone's so afraid of having a conversation
Yes.
that we don't even talk about it because we're afraid to even have the conversation. And if you just have the conversation, if you just acknowledge the elephant in the room and talk about it, and that goes with anything in life, when you, with your peers, I think as we get, I think a lot of ways as you grow older, life gets more simple because you understand things more. But I think it also gets much more complex because you see history behind you and in front of you. And it's a lot to reconcile. And if you just talk to each other, if we all just talk about it.
It's like our view on talking about parenting, right? It's like all these things we don't want to admit.
Yeah. But if you just get it out there,
Right.
it's that you're halfway there. And it's never, I don't think a ton of bad things can come from having obviously a civilized conversation, but it's good to have different opinions and different points of view. And that's what makes the world so wonderful.
And I always just love hearing people's stories
I
who
know.
have lives that are just not like mine.
I
I feel
mean-
like it can get a little.
And Debbie has like 44 markers of which her life is nothing like mine. She's
Sure.
just so remarkable. So we hope you guys liked it, and we will see you next week.